Morning, everyone. We'll be starting shortly in 5 minutes.
हाँ बॉस, अरे लोग आ गए, not bad.
Yes, people are starting. So I think next 5 minutes we'll start.
ठीक है, फिट है. So I can ask questions during during the presentation, and people will raise their hands and respond.
So people will raise their hands, and so our team will unmute them
ठीक है,
immediately.
ठीक है, बहुत बढ़िया,
That will announce.
बहुत बढ़िया. ये बॉस विजय, एक बात बताओ, ये लोग सब नॉर्थ इंडिया से हैं, दिल्ली से हैं या
No,
सारे?
sir, across India, sir. A lot of startups will be from South also.
Okay, so they won't all understand Hindi.
Yeah, they understand Hindi. They will understand.
They will, okay.
Yeah.
मतलब जोक मुझे ट्रांसलेट नहीं करना पड़ेगा.
No.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
So we'll start in 2 more minutes. We'll wait for 2 more minutes and we'll start.
Sure. Thank you. विनय के लिए.
Yes, Mr. Arul, the presentation will be completely in English. Mobin, can we start now?
Yes, sir. We can start.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vijay Veer Singh, representing Amity Innovation Incubator and your host for the day. Thank you for joining us today for our second session on the art of pitching to an investor from the ongoing A to Z of Startup Investment Series. Before I introduce you to the speaker for the day, let me give you a brief intro to Amity Innovation Incubator. We take pride in introducing Amity Innovation Incubator as a very comprehensive startup ecosystem that exists in India. We started our operation way back in 2007 under the aegis of our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Asim Chauhan sir, with a vision to ensure that a comprehensive ecosystem is in place to nurture entrepreneurs and strengthen the innovation culture at grassroots level. We are supported by Department of Science and Technology, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog, MIT, and MSME. We have supported more than 500 ventures and had invested in 55 ventures through Amity Capital Venture, which is our investment vehicle with dozens of exits so far. We started with 12,000 square feet of incubation space, which is now expanded to more than 45,000 square feet at our headquarters in Noida, with physical presence across 7 states and 17 virtual locations in India and 7 locations abroad. We have been providing the soft landing platform to our incubated startups who are looking to scale their operation outside India through our international presence. For more information on incubation and funding support, do reach out to us. I'll be sharing you my credentials in the chat in a short while. Now, coming back to today's webinar, a venture capital fund listens about 1,000 pitches a year or more, of which only 5 on an average end up in investment. The pitch is the most important tool for a startup to become known. And the goal of a pitch is to convince an investor to put their time, money, or efforts into your brainwave. We, as a part of its 3-session series on A to Z of startup investment, is organizing our second session today on the art of pitching to investor. Dr. Dhruv Nath, our speaker for today, he is the director, Lead Angels. He will share few pointers that will help you master the art of pitching to an investor. Giving you a background of Dr. Dhruv, Dr. Dhruv is a professor at MTI Gurugram. He is also an angel investor and a director with Lead Angels Network. In the process, Dr. Nath has mentored over 50 digital business startups such as Planet Spark, Trivon, MyCute Office, etc. Earlier, he spent 20 years in NIIT, where he launched and headed several new initiatives such as National Institute of Sales and LEDA. His last assignment at NIIT was creating and heading NIIT e-business practice as Senior Vice President. Dr. Nath has been a consultant to the top management of several organizations such as Glaxo, Apollo Hospital, Gillette, Nestle, Bajaj Auto, etc. in the strategic use of IT for business. Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares is his fourth book. Prior to this, he has written 3 books published by McGraw-Hill. Dr. Nath has a BTech in Electrical Engineering and a PhD in Computer Science area, both from IIT Delhi. On the behalf of Amity Innovation Incubator, I thank you, sir, for accepting our request for today's session on the art of pitching to an investor. We all are looking forward for a great session today. Over to you, sir.
Okay,
To
great.
requesting all participants, whatever queries you have, please raise your hand in the middle. Sir will be asking a lot of questions during the session. It will be more of an interactive session, just not a one-sided one. Right, sir. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vijay. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes,
So,
very much, sir.
yeah, so I must tell you, for the last approximately 8 years, I have been spending a lot of time with young startups, lot of time, and I learn a lot from them. I don't know how much they learn from me, but I learn a lot from them. And whatever I learn from them is then shared with other startups, other youngsters. And in fact, it's also shared in my books. And this is my current book, Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares. By the way, I must tell you that I have spoken to Vijay and Ojasvi, who heads the Amity incubation program. And some of the participants of the webinar will get a free copy of this book signed by me. Okay, so that you will get over the next few days. So what I will do is I will just start with the first part. So I'll do this in 2 parts. Part one, in fact, I must tell you whatever I'm talking about here is picked up from my book because essentially the book is about helping people who want to get funding, right, in startups. So in part one, I will take you through one story which has come out in the book and which I have been associated with, one startup. And from there, I will try and extract what I call a framework for creating a successful startup. Okay, because all investors want successful startups, right? So I'll talk about that framework. So that's part one. In part two, I will then tell you what investors look for and therefore how you can pitch to them. Okay. Now, obviously, in this hour and a half or so that we have today, I can't tell you everything that the investor wants to know. That will take us a few days, but at least the 2 or 3 key things which are required and which, unfortunately, a lot of founders miss when they talk to investors when they pitch. Okay, so that's in part two. So let me start with the first one, and I'll start by sharing my screen. Yeah. So can you see this? Okay, great. Yeah. And like Vijay mentioned, let's try and keep this session a little interactive. One way speaking can become very boring. It is like a political rally, right? And right now it's not a political rally. Okay. So first of all, I will talk about this framework and I'll share this framework with the example of a story. And like I said, and by the way, this is the book, which you can see on the right. So this is a picture from a startup called Uno Finance, right? And let me explain what they're trying to do. So this is a startup which is approximately 4 years old now. The problem is, loans are available for everything. You want to buy a car, you want to buy a tractor, you want to buy a house, whatever you want to buy, you get a loan. But the one time when you really need a loan, which is when either you or somebody in the family is getting hospitalized, that's the time loans are not available. And very simple reason why: it's high risk, right? Because the loan may not be repaid. So unfortunately, at the end of the hospitalization, you may not survive, in which case you will not pay back the loan, right? Or you may survive, but you may not be able to work for maybe 6 months, maybe 1 year, which means you do not get any income and therefore you aren't able to pay back. Okay, so which is the reason why loans for hospitalization have been almost none. However, if you look at it, there are also a lot of examples of low risk hospitalization. I'll just share with you one example. Today, it's very common to have knee replacement surgery, right? Knee replacement surgery or knee operations, what is also sometimes called arthroscopy. So that's not a risky operation. It's not life threatening. You will not die because of that operation. What may happen is you may have to walk on crutches for some time. Maybe your knee will not get better, but you will not stop earning, right? So that's a low risk hospitalization case. And what Uno Finance decided was, okay, we will identify low risk hospitalization situations and we will give loans for this. Okay, so that was their business. Now, very, very interesting revenue model that these guys have. Very interesting. What is the rate of interest they charge? So, by the way, I must tell you the way they work. They're not an NBFC. They have NBFCs back of them, which means they take the money from the NBFC and then they distribute it to these patients and relatives of patients, right? So they are essentially a kind of front end to the NBFC. What is the rate of interest they charge? I was amazed when I discovered this. It's zero. You know how? It's very simple. Many hospitals have spare capacity. I'm not talking of today's COVID times, right? Today, unfortunately, hospitals are choked. But in normal times, many hospitals have spare capacity, right? Many patients are not able to afford these hospitals. Okay. With these zero interest loans, suddenly the patients could afford them, and therefore capacity utilization of the hospital went up. So the hospital got more revenue, no more fixed cost, it got revenue. And therefore it said, okay, I will give a share, a percentage of the revenue that you get me to you, which is to Uno Finance. So they used to get a commission for every patient, and that commission was shared between Uno Finance and the NBFC who had lent the money. Okay, so it's actually a very, very brilliant model. Marketing, very interesting. Things like Facebook, Google AdWords, etc., will not work because nobody will even think of loans for hospitalization till you actually are in a situation where you're likely to get hospitalized, right? So what they did was they said, okay, we will tie up with hospitals and we will put kiosks at the reception. So if you go to hospitals in Delhi, I've been to one where I saw the kiosk, Batra Hospital, fairly large hospital in Delhi. You'll have a kiosk there. The guy is walking out looking very depressed because the doctor has suddenly told him, look, you need surgery and it's going to cost you 4 lakhs. And the guy doesn't have that money. So he's thinking of a cheaper option. Now he walks out and he sees at the reception, there is a kiosk which says 0 interest EMI loan. And he jumps. He says, boss, this is exactly what I wanted, right? So this is the way they market themselves. Okay. Now, based on this, this is the story. Let me now tell you something about the framework that we are talking about, right? And this framework is again picked up from this book. It's basically based on, all the startups that we have seen, the successes as well as the failures. Okay. So what is required for a successful startup? And I call it a persistent framework, right? So each letter of this word persistent stands for something. Okay, so let's start with the first letter, which is P. You have to be solving a problem for somebody. If you don't, obviously you don't have a business, isn't it? And here clearly they were solving a problem because people wanted to be treated, people who were supposed to be hospitalized wanted to go into a good expensive hospital, but they couldn't afford it. Here, suddenly they were able to afford it. So they were solving a problem. The second piece, earnings model. It's great if you can solve a problem for the customer, but somebody has to be willing to pay you for this, right? Now, here the customer was not paying, but the hospital was paying. So they had an earnings model, they got revenues, right? So the second factor in your framework, persistent. Third, what's the size of the market? And you must understand why this is so important to a startup. The reason why it's important is, you don't want to create a startup and then stagnate at 20 lakhs of revenue, isn't it? You want to grow, and you want to grow and grow and grow and grow and finally, hopefully, become a unicorn. Right? But you can only do that if the size of the market you're operating in is large. Okay. Now look at this market. It's actually huge, right? The market for loans is huge, isn't it? I mean, everybody wants loans. But the problem is sometimes in this huge market, it's a very crowded market. So if you're looking at giving loans, there are more than 100 different companies, maybe more than 500 giving loans, right? Therefore, when you're trying to get into a market which is large but very crowded, which means too many competitors already present, what you must do is you must look for a subset of that market which is not crowded. Okay, and then operate there. And what these guys did is exactly this. They said, okay, we will not give loans in general, we will give loans for hospitalization, which is a non-crowded market. Even that is a very large market, right? And I call that a niche, a subset, a niche market, but a large enough niche. Okay, so these guys had identified successfully a large enough niche in the space of giving loans. I'm just taking my tea. Since Amity has refused to send me coffee, I'm taking my own tea. Okay. Now the other fundamental question, and I want to ask you guys this question. Let's make it a little interactive. The other very, very important thing that you must look at is scalability, right? Now, I have two questions. Number one, what is scalability? How is it different from size of the market? And number two, why is scalability so important? So while I have my tea, can somebody answer this question? Anyone? Come on, you're all bright, smart young guys and girls. Anyone? What is scalability and why is it so important? Can you raise your hands so I know who wants to answer? Vijay, are people raising their hands? I am not able to see.
Yes, they are raising. Mobin, if you can just unmute Aman Jain.
Yeah.
Mr. Patnaik is also there.
In fact, what you can do, Vijay, my suggestion is let's unmute everybody and they can personally mute themselves. So on their own, they can unmute themselves. That will make it much faster.
Sure. Let me just check with you.
Yeah, just unmute everybody.
Yeah, Aman, yeah, you can.
Yes, sir. Hi, sir. Hi, Dhruv, sir. How are you?
Badhiya, tell me, Aman.
So, scalability is important because the growth of a startup is dependent on the scalability. So, the bigger the total addressable market, the more we can scale and the more could be our annual growth.
Okay, so I agree with you. Only thing is, what I was asking was, what's the difference between size and scalability? Two different things.
Okay. So, sir, I know what I think is that scalability depends on the size of the market, but I don't know the difference between the two.
I will send you one chocolate.
Sir, can I say something?
1 minute. For the first guy who tried, I will send you one chocolate. Okay?
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Can I say something on scalability?
Yeah, please. Who's that? Just give your name.
Yeah,
please.
Suraj.
Suraj, sir. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, scalability, the size of the market is the market in which you give your potential.
Correct.
But apart from your own capability, you need it to capture that market. And to capture that market, you need a lot of funding and other things so that you can scale your existing project on a bigger way. So this is the scalability.
Agreed. Suraj, you also get a chocolate, but my question is,
it is the potential of business model to expand sizably to the market. I mean,
yes. Okay, who said that?
Kamaksha Prasad Nayak.
Kamaksha. Okay, wonderful. Kamaksha, you get 1.5 chocolates.
Thank you.
But that is the right answer.
Thank you, sir.
Dekho, boss, very simple. Yeah, my request is if you mute yourselves, all of you personally, and when you have to answer a question, unmute yourself. Okay. Right now there is somebody's mother is firing him in the background, I think. Yeah. Okay. So, size of the market tells you how big the market is. Scalability tells you how fast you can grow within that market. Okay, and they're two different things. So now let's look at Uno Finance. How scalable do you think this is? Is it a scalable business? Is it a non-scalable business?
Sir,
It's a scalable
scalable.
business.
Okay, who said that?
Suraj,
Suraj. Why? Tell me. Who is
because sir,
BP Patnaik?
this type of problem is available everywhere
So
in
1
the
minute.
in each city or
Ek minute.
in each city, and even in my city, big hospitals.
Pause 1 minute. Please listen 1 minute. Who's BP Patnaik? Because he always tries to speak. No. Okay. Yeah, Suraj, tell me. Oh, by the way,
Yes,
I refuse to listen to your answers. I don't talk to people I can't see. So please switch on your videos. All of you.
Sorry,
Switch on
sir,
your
they
videos.
can't switch off their video because they are in attendees. So they
Correct.
can only communicate with you only verbally.
Oh, अच्छा. चलो ठीक है. Okay. कोई बात नहीं. No problem. You can show me your face later. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, Suraj,
sure,
tell
sir.
me.
Yes, I was telling
boss.
that business is very scalable because it has right now it has tested its project in big cities, but even cities in my size, middle class cities, where big hospitals are there, lot of potential are there, but it is not being used by the customers. Means who can pay it, but who don't have money, but they want to get their operations.
So
Medical
Suraj,
first. Yes, sir.
so hold on. So that is size of the market. I agree there is a huge opportunity. That's the size of the market. My question is, why are these guys likely to grow rapidly? That is my question. Anybody else wants to try this? Okay, let me ask you a slightly different question. Uno Finance today is about 4 years old, approximately, right? Let me go back to the 80s, right? 1980s, when Infosys was born. And let us look at Infosys when they were 4 years old. Compare Infosys and Uno Finance at a similar stage, both 4 years old. Which of them is more scalable? Tell me.
Sir, Aman, this
Uno
side,
Finance.
if we see today's era, definitely Uno Finance is going to grow faster. And the reason of scalability that you was asking, I think they can scale their business to the medical test as well. So, for example, an MRI or a CT scan can cost up to 10,000 or 20,000 rupees as well. So maybe someone could not have that money ready with him or her, so they can provide loan to that market as well.
That is again size of the market.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
why is Uno Finance more scalable than Infosys, assuming Infosys is 4 years old today? Okay, let me give you even another hint, right? Because I want you to get this difference, and this is very, 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 very important when you make a pitch to investors, right? And that's why I'm focusing on it. Compare Make My Trip. Okay, let's take Make My Trip. Let's assume it is four years old today, and compare that with Infosys when it is 4 years old. And let's assume it is today, both of them. Which is more scalable? Whoever
Sir,
answers this question gets 2 chocolates.
Make My Trip, because the currently the dispensable income of the every individual has increased, and if we look in the today's generation,
That size of the market.
that is again okay.
Why can they grow much faster than Infosys? You're right, they can grow much faster.
Can I
Sir,
answer this
maybe
question?
they are
Because
online
the demand
aggregators.
of the market.
Can we have somebody
Because
else? Please unmute.
because-
Sorry, please.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
my
sir.
God. Please.
Sir, this
Please,
is
all of you. No. Please, all of you, mute yourselves. Let it be one person at a time. It can't. See, 6 people at a time cannot speak. Let it be one person, please. I
Sir,
can't
can
hear
I?
a voice. Yeah? No,
Sir.
hold on. Let somebody else get a chance first. Somebody else? Anybody else who's not
Sir,
spoken?
Sitanshu here.
It's Vikram.
Sir, Sitanshu here.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, I'm Sitanshu Mishra. I'm the founder of Job School.
Okay.
So, in fact, sir, it's very nice to interact with you in person over here. So, sir, according to me, Uno Finance will get a better chance of being scalable The reason would be like the demand in the market. Like how many of like the problems Infosys tries to solve in terms of developing softwares is the end users are quite less. But
Boss, that is size of the market. Again, okay. So let me try and answer this. Just
Sir,
look at
let me,
the.
can I take,
Can I give it a
Let's have
try?
one more person.
Sir,
One
give
okay,
me
one
one
more.
try as
From,
well.
Yeah.
one more
sir,
new
this,
guy.
my name is Arun Kumar, so I am into the same field. So I am the co-founder of MedExpress.
Okay.
So basically, I understand the size of the market. The surgery market is around $40 billion.
Okay.
But then the insurance sector or the health insurance sector, if you see, it is only 4%. So imagine 96% of the people do cash, billing. So for that, and specifically out of that, almost 70% of people from tier 2, tier 3 cities need
So-
finance to do it. So
So
that's
boss,
where the scalability. Yeah.
so hold on. All of you are correct, but all of you are talking about size of the market, and all of you are saying. Boss,
Bro, sir, please give me one chance.
Okay, I
That
think
other
Vijay,
companies are not giving.
it is not working, so I think we have to mute everybody. It's not working, obviously.
Sir,
So-
just
No. It's not working. I mean, there are 6 people talking together. We obviously can't proceed. Okay. So, sorry, I tried to make it interactive, but I mean, if everybody is going to talk at the same time, it won't work. So, so I think right now, Vijay will go back to raising hands and then asking people to inviting
Yes,
people
sir.
to speak. Right?
Yes, that's
And
much.
ideally, let us have different people if possible, right? Rather than one person asking or replying every time, right? Okay. So I agree with all of you. Size of the market is huge and it is an untapped market because yes, today people don't have, most people don't have insurance, hospitalization is increasing, etc., etc., etc. If you compare Make My Trip and Infosys, the fundamental difference between these two is Make My Trip is a purely digital business, purely online. It is not manpower dependent, right? You want to double in 1 year, no problem. All you have to do is your server will have to have higher capacity, right? And you'll have to spend more on marketing. No problem. You can immediately ramp up. Compare that with Infosys. Infosys is a manpower dependent business, right? In Infosys, if you want to increase your revenue 10 times in 1 year, you can't. Why? Because you have to hire 10 times the number of people because you'll be billing each person, correct? And when you have 10 times the number of people, you will need 10 times the number of buildings, 10 times the infrastructure, 10 times the number of computers. Very difficult to get so many things together, right? How will you get so many people? How will you train them? 1/3 of them will leave because that's the turnover in the industry, right? So please remember, anything which is technology based is always much more scalable than anything which is manual, right? And therefore, Make My Trip is much more scalable than Infosys. Now come to our Uno Finance. Okay, Uno Finance is almost entirely a technology based business because on that kiosk you apply. Backend, they have an engine which a software engine which checks out, what your background is, your credit score, your CIBIL score, your Aadhaar card, all these details. It checks out your income, your salary, etc. It figures out whether you have the ability to pay or not, and only then does it sanction the loan. Okay, and all that is done automatically. It's a technology business. The only manpower that is involved, actually, the only manpower is the fact that the kiosk has a human being who helps you to go through your process of getting the loan. But please remember, this human being is very, very, very low level, very low skilled compared to the programmers and systems analysts that Infosys requires. So you can easily get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 such people. There's no problem. It's a 5-day training program. Infosys, you can't suddenly get 10,000 programmers, right? So this business is very, very highly scalable. And please remember, the reason why scalability is important, and you must appreciate this point. The reason why scalability is so important is if you don't scale up rapidly, it may be a large market, but there are lots of other guys waiting to get into the same opportunity. They will get in They will take away your customers, they will eat into your market share, and they will potentially kill you. Okay. So the reason why you need to be scalable is that you need to grow fast so that you can stay ahead of competition. And investors look for that. Very, very important issue investors look for. Okay. So let's take it forward now. There is another by the way, if you look at each of these words, right? If you look at the first letter, you find this is PERSS. You'll find these are all letters of the word persistent, right? So now risks. Obviously, there are many risks in any business, and the biggest risk, or one of the biggest risks, is the risk of competition getting in, right? And therefore, you need something called an entry barrier. So what's an entry barrier? Entry barrier means this is my business. I have to prevent my competitor from getting into the business. And therefore, I have to have something in my business which is a barrier to that guy entering. Agreed? Now, one potential entry barrier is if you have a very innovative solution. Right? For example, if you have, let's say, a piece of software, a complex piece of software, which is very difficult to copy. Or if you have some kind of device and you have patented it, that is very difficult to copy because legally the other guy is not allowed to copy it, right? So a patent is a very strong entry barrier. Now the question which I ask you is, what is the kind of entry barrier that Uno Finance has? And Vijay, again, same request. If you guys can raise your hands, let's get answers one by one.
Sure.
Okay, any hands? I don't see any hands yet. Is it a good entry barrier, bad entry barrier? Come on, guys, you're all founders, you're all CEOs, smart
So
guys.
Vikram can be unmuted.
Yeah,
Bolo.
hi. So one of the
Yeah.
entry barrier could be that their distribution channel, which is that they tie up with various hospitals that they have done. So the new player would have to start from scratch for tying it up with multiple hospitals. So Uno Finance could have an edge over others in that area.
Wonderful. Wonderful. In fact, that's a very good comment. So 2 chocolates for you, Vikram.
Thank
First,
you.
say you want Kit Kat, you want Dairy Milk.
I need that book, sir. You can.
Oh, अच्छा okay. Yeah, chocolate to anyway ले ले. क्या problem? By the way, all people that I mentor pick up a copy of the book in any case. But let's keep that aside. Okay, so you're right. If you can tie up with hospitals, at least in those hospitals, it becomes an entry barrier. You know why? Very simple. The reception in the hospital has a limited amount of space. You can't have 50 kiosks sitting there. When I went to Batra Hospital, I saw 3, and they won't go beyond 3 because they don't have space, right? So yes, this is a bit of an entry barrier, at least for the hospitals that you've already gone into. And if you can scale up rapidly, then it's a large number of hospitals. However, for the new hospitals which haven't yet gone into this, right now there's no entry barrier because anybody can come in. Anybody can tie up with an NBFC and therefore come in, right? So let us now tell you how these guys managed to create an entry barrier. And again, what they did was very smart, very, very smart guys. I'll tell you about the next phase of Uno Finance, which they have now got into. They said, why not expand the market? We are into loans for hospitalization. And so far, we are only into what we think is low risk hospitalization, right? Where the chances of dying are virtually zero, and the chances of, not being able to work after this are almost zero, etc., etc. So they said, okay, let us give loans for riskier kinds of hospitalization, but we try and estimate the risk in those cases. Okay, how did they do that? They said, what we will do is, firstly, we will have a group of doctors and they will keep researching based on medical journals, right? So for example, let's say open heart surgery, or let's say heart bypass, or putting in stents because your artery is blocked, right? Blood vessels are blocked, right? What is the risk of a procedure in Indian males above the age of 60? And they were able to get all this data and they had all this data with them. Okay, so that is number one. So now they know the risk. Secondly, what they do is they do a hell of a lot of analytics. In fact, they are doing machine learning now. What they do is they gather more and more data based on hospitalization, and they say, okay, for heart bypass surgery, for this hospital, for this particular doctor, for a patient who has this kind of history, the risk is 20%. Okay. Now, because they are able to figure out the risk, they can identify the next risky categories. They may not have zero risk, but they may have 15-20% risk. And to cover that 15-20% risk, they will charge some interest. So the zero risk patients get loans on zero EMI, right? Zero interest. But the slightly more risky guys get loans at some interest. Okay, and therefore the risk of the loan not being paid is covered. Now, their forecasting of risk is far better. So, you know, the important thing here, please remember, why is the entry barrier here suddenly high? Because nobody else was giving these loans, and any competitor would need to gather all this data, build up the machine learning model in such a way, because, you know, machine learning becomes more and more accurate as you get more and more data. So as they got more and more data, it became more accurate. Now for the next guy to enter, he will need all this data, which will take him 6 years to maybe 6 months to maybe a year. So they have an entry barrier of maybe 6 months to 1 year. And I think it's a brilliant concept, absolutely brilliant, right? So when they started, they said only low risk or zero risk. Now they are doing low risk. And what is low risk and how much risk is there is figured out by their machine learning model. Okay. So this is so far I've talked about 8 pieces in this. Of course, very important is the team. And the team obviously starts with the founder or founders, maybe 2, maybe 3. There is a saying that we have in the startup world, which is if you have a great business model but an average team, it won't work. But if you have an average business model and a great team, starting with the founders, they will figure out a way to make it work. So we guys as investors, as early stage investors, right? Later stage investors can see the business, right? But early stage investors, the one thing they probably give the most importance to is the founders. Okay, so keep that in mind.
Sir, Akhilesh Kohli has a question, sir.
Yeah, Akhilesh, tell me, boss.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Nath. How are you?
Perfect. Enjoying the virus.
We're all trying to survive.
No, come on, boss. Be hopeful. There are a lot of positive signs out there.
Absolutely.
Negative.
The opportunities out there are like never before. This is something that I agree to wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
So my question is that, you've mentioned 2 entry barriers for Uno Finance, right? The first one being their tie-ups with their hospitals, and the second one being the entry into a market that most people would not want to get into. Right. But I believe that these are entry barriers that they've put up post their launch and after being in the market. On day one, these entry barriers were not present for the business, right? So so these moats were built over time. My question is that what are the moats that you thought for Uno Finance were present on day one?
Okay. Great question. Sorry, your name is Akhilesh.
Akhilesh Kohli.
Okay. Akhilesh, you get 3 chocolates. Each chocolate will be a different kind. Wonderful. By the way, normally when you start your business, most startups almost never have an entry barrier. Almost never. So you're absolutely right. As they started tying up with hospitals, the entry barrier kept building up for these hospitals. Now that they've gone into their second phase, their entry barrier is built up because now they're covering semi-risky kind of operations. I'll give you a parallel. The day Maggie was launched, Maggie noodles, right? What was the entry barrier? Zilch, zero. Once it started getting popular over time, word of mouth built, the kid would go to his friend and say, "Aaj pata hai, maine Maggie khai hai." Acha, I also want to eat Maggie. That becomes an entry barrier. So in most cases, entry barriers happen over time. Most cases. However, there are situations where you could have entry barriers before that. For example, if you have a major tie-up with a large player, right? That's a potential entry barrier. Okay. Secondly, if before launching you have built up a complex product, and that product is such that it will take 6 months to 1 year to copy, that's an entry barrier, right? So if you have put in that kind of investment either into these major tie-ups or into creating a product, that's your entry barrier. But in the services kind of business, the kind that Uno Finance is into, most of the time you will not have entry barriers the day you launch, and that is one big reason why. Because if you scale up rapidly, you get known, the trust is there, the brand is there, that's your entry barrier. Is that okay, Akhilesh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. So, another question, that arises from this is that you mentioned that scale up needs to happen within 6 months to 1 year in an
No,
organization.
I just took an example. I mean, I
Okay,
didn't say not necessary, not necessary.
not necessary. All right. Okay.
Essentially, essentially, you have to look at your business area. You have to look at who your competitors are, who your potential competitors are. You have to scale up faster than they can. That's essentially it. If it means those guys are, I'll give you an example, very simple example. The day TikTok left India, right? You had guys like Chingari, you had guys like Riposo, you had guys like Mitro, right? They probably didn't have more than 2 to 3 months to scale up, because after that, only the top two would have survived, right? So it actually depends on who your competitors are, what your business is. All I'm saying is that you have to scale up faster than your competitors and your potential competitors can. That's all I'm saying.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. That
Okay.
answers my question.
Okay, great. Okay, so the last thing, after all this, uh, what's the final proof? You may have a brilliant business model, you've taken care of risks, you have a strong entry barrier, great team, etc. But what's final proof? What is the final proof? In simple Hindi, and I mean, I'll have to translate it for the guys who live in the south and therefore may not understand Hindi. In simple Hindi, it is dhanda ka hai, kitna dhanda hai, what is the actual revenue you got, what are the actual customers you've got, right? You may have a great model. I want to see proof that you're getting customers, proof that these customers are growing month on month, year on year, quarter on quarter, and ultimately are paying, right? So ultimately, what is very, very important is traction. Okay, and that is the final proof of all this. Okay, I just want to mention one more thing. And by the way, that's the persistent framework, because if you now pick up the first letter of each of these, that's your persistent model. I just want to mention one more thing. The English meaning of the word persistent. What does it mean? Keep on and on and on and on at it, right? Because you'll have tough times. Last year was a very tough time for most companies. It still continues to be a tough time for most of them, right? You got to keep on and on at it. You got to keep fighting. If you give up, that's the end, right? So one of the things that leads to a successful startups is you've got to be following the English meaning of the word persistent. Okay. So what I will do is I will now stop this part, the first part. I've talked about the persistent framework. What I will now talk about is I will talk about the investor's viewpoint. Yeah? Because I'm assuming you guys want to raise money. So I'll just stop sharing. Just hold on. Yeah. Okay. And I will share now. Okay. So now I come to the topic that I was asked to speak about. I wanted to give you a background first. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So again, like I said, I can't cover everything, although if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. So fundamental question number one, you have to understand what investors look for. What are they looking for? Okay. And let's have some answers. Let's again open it up, Vijay.
Yes.
Yeah. What are investors looking for? Because whatever they are looking for, if they see it in you and your startup, you got your money, right? So what are they looking for?
Please raise hand before.
Yeah, boss.
Vikram is there. You can unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Vikram,
So-
yeah, tell me, boss.
So it is a scalable business model with the right team
Correct.
that they look for.
Wonderful. Okay. I agree with you. Badhiya. Anybody else?
Yes, BP Patnaik. I'm not sure who is. Yeah, please.
I think BP Patnaik is Suraj, if I remember right. Because
Multiple.
that used to light up when Suraj spoke. I don't know why he's hiding his name. Anyway.
Yeah, please.
Traction of the company.
Yes, sir. This is Suraj again.
Okay.
Investor is looking for the return on investment.
Wonderful. Return on
That how
investment.
much get the return.
Okay. What else? So you guys have talked about three things. What else?
Traction.
Traction. Wonderful. Anything else? I'm looking for that one answer, and that guy will get a full carton of chocolates.
The reason behind your fundraise, why are you raising money? Is it because everybody is raising money that you are raising, or they just
Okay. By the way, I must tell you this: never raise money just because it is fashionable to do so. Raise money only if it is required. Absolutely agreed. Okay. So I'll just try and summarize. You guys have mentioned 4 or 5 points. I will just extract from that. Do you agree with this? This is what investors look for. Are you solving a problem? Will you be earning money out of it? Have you taken care of the risk? Do you have an entry barrier? Is it a large enough market size? Scalable? What's the team? Traction, etc., etc., etc. Right? So please remember the investor, and that's the reason why I spent half an hour to 45 minutes talking about the persistent model. Because that's what the investor looks for. It doesn't matter whether it's the angel investor or the VC or whatever, it doesn't matter. The investor looks for a successful startup. The founder also wants to create a successful startup. Both of them are looking for exactly the same thing. Okay. So issue number one, when you're making a pitch to your investor, make sure that these issues are taken care of. Is that okay? So that's number one, step number one. Number two, you know, anytime you go and make a pitch, you'll have maybe 40, 50, 100, 200 investors listening. They don't have time, right? There are pitch sessions I've been to where people have been given 15 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes 1 minute also. In 1 minute, what the hell can you say? Or in 2 minutes, right? So now, please remember, you have limited time when you're making a pitch. Okay. I'll just take one very simple example, right? You can see what this is. Suppose you go to a South Indian restaurant, right? And by the way, it could also be a Punjabi dhaba, but I'm just taking the example of a South Indian restaurant. And you ask the waiter, boss, kya hai? What is available to eat? What will he typically say? Sir, masala dosa, paper dosa, plain dosa, rava dosa, butter masala dosa, paneer dosa, Mysore dosa, da 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 da. What the hell do you remember, if anything? Nothing. You will say, boss, please hold on. I couldn't understand. I couldn't hear. Please say it again. What will he say? Sir, masala dosa, paper dosa, plain dosa, rava dosa, blah, 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 blah. Similarly, when you make a long presentation, what do you remember? You probably remember nothing, right? In fact, not a worse situation is the guy who's making the presentation. He makes a long presentation, says lots of things, and what you remember is not what he wanted you to remember. That's a big problem. So you must remember one fundamental issue. Communication is not what you say. Communication is what the listener receives and retains. So when he goes out of the room, acha, this is what I remember. Okay, this is what he was saying. That is important. Okay, so I will share with you one concept. And this is a concept that I have, again, it's in the, whatever I'm talking about is from the book. This again is from the book. This is the concept of Vikram, right? And let me ask you one question. I'm sure you have the answer. Who said this and when? I'm sure you have the answer. Who said this and when?
Modi ji.
Okay.
Modi ji.
Modi ji, at the time that he was campaigning for the 2014 elections, right? He made long speeches. You never remembered anything. But the one thing you remembered, achhe din aane wale. You may or may not agree with it, but that's the power of the communication. You remember that one thing, okay? Look at the next thing. Who said this?
Obama.
Barack Obama during his presidential campaign. And again, he said lots of things, but what people remembered was this. Okay. What do you remember in the Maggie campaign? 2 minutes. You may forget everything else. You remember it, you can make it, you can boil it in 2 minutes. Okay. Fevicol ads. There are lots of ads. What do you remember?
पकड़ेगा छोड़ना नहीं.
It sticks, right? Pakad leta, chipak jata, it sticks. I'm just translating for the benefit of the people in the south, right? So now just notice one important thing. I've given you 4 examples. In each case, there is a key message that the communicator has been trying to communicate to the audience. And that key message has been communicated successfully, right? And I call this Vikram, which is what's your key message? You must remember when you are making a pitch, and by the way, not only pitch, whenever you're selling, you could be selling to your customers, you could be selling to consumers, you could be B2B, could be B2C, it could be selling on Facebook, it could be advertising on Amazon, could be anything. My point is very simple. What's your key message? And incidentally, it doesn't have to be one very catchy phrase like this. It can be 3 things, it can be 4 things, but it can't be 30, right? You have to decide what those 3-4 things are, and you have to make sure they are retained by the guy who's listening to you. Okay, because people cannot absorb too many concepts. You have to decide what they will absorb. Don't let them decide, and therefore that's your Vikram. Okay? So let's take an example. Since I've been talking of Uno Finance, let us assume you're making the Uno Finance presentation to investors, right? And I will take you back approximately 2 years in time, which is when they were raising the second round, right? Because that's the time I also tried to invest. I couldn't, but I tried to, right? So what's the Vikram they use for the investor? 4 very simple points. 0 interest loans for hospitalization, virgin untapped market, significant growth so far, entry barrier through machine learning. Period. That's it. You don't need 45 slides. You don't need text packed from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. You don't need to say 45 things. These 4 things have to go home. And you know what happened? Their investor pitch, I'll tell you what happened. I've never seen this, by the way, a thing like this. They wanted a valuation of 25 crores pre-money. Okay. Informally, that's what they said. Heavily oversubscribed. Finally, they raised money at a valuation of 30 crores. Normally, when you ask for a certain valuation, the investors pull you down. Here, there was so much excitement that it was pulled up. Okay, and I've never seen a thing like this. So all I'm trying to say is your Vikram has to be very strongly and clearly communicated. Don't clutter up your presentation. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3. Today we are in COVID times. Okay. And I want to share with you two examples. And I also want to tell you what the investors are looking at in COVID and post-COVID. Of course, one thing which which I won't talk about is there are certain industries which are in trouble, right? Like anything to do with travel, anything to do with hospitality, hotels, gyms, movies, etc. Right? So I won't talk about that because you know that. So they are because of the curfew and the lockdown and so on. These industries are not doing well. Okay, I'll give you two examples. There is this very interesting company called Iril Farms. These guys supply organic fruit and vegetables. Organic means there is no chemical fertilizer, no pesticide, so natural stuff, right? Healthy, nutritious. Now, I won't get into details here, but organic stuff cannot be grown in isolated farms. You have to have a cluster of farms, all of which grow organic stuff. Otherwise, the water from the other neighboring farm can seep into your land, and therefore what you thought was organic is not organic anymore. So what these guys did was they tied up with Himachal farmers. This is a place near Solan, between Solan and Shimla. By the way, that's my hometown. So they tied up with farmers there and they were doing organic farming, and they used to pick up the stuff from there, bring it to Delhi, clean it, package it, brand it, and supply it to retailers starting it with Gurgaon and ultimately Delhi also. Now what happened? All of you know what happened. 25th March 2020, lockdown for 3 months, correct? What happened to transportation from Himachal to Gurgaon? Stopped. No transport. Therefore, their business stopped. Okay, because the farmers were still growing stuff, but they couldn't bring it from there in Himachal because, coming from Himachal to Gurgaon, you will probably have to cross 2 or 3 state borders, Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, and again Haryana. So it stopped. The business just stopped. So what do? They said, okay, we will fight. The lockdown is a crisis, COVID is a crisis, but we will fight. We will take advantage of the lockdown. You know what they did? They realized that during the lockdown, even the supply of normal vegetables was badly hit. Why? Because farmers, there was no transport. So even farmers in Haryana or Gurgaon or near Gurgaon could not reach the mandis to supply their vegetables. The retailers could not reach their mandis to pick up the vegetables. So supplies were completely badly hit of normal vegetables. I'm not talking of organic now. What these guys said was, okay, we will go to local farmers in Gurgaon and nearby, not normal, not organic. We'll pick up regular vegetables from them. Okay, we will supply them direct to retailers and we'll make a profit on it. But very, very important, and please note this thing in red, it is not under the Iril Fresh brand because Iril Fresh refers to organic, right? This is unbranded, simply cleaned, packaged and supplied. That's it, nothing more, right? What happened? Because of this, these guys actually, their business grew in the lockdown. Although the organic business did not, this regular business did, and they survived. And not only did they survive, the retailer says, boss, you are very, very good suppliers. You're very reliable. Even during times of crisis, you will supply to us. So after the crisis got over, the retailers kept coming back to them. Okay. Please remember, this was not a long-term pivot. They are not into regular supplies. They are into organic, right? But they managed to survive and in fact grow during the lockdown. Okay. Investors look for fighters. When you have a crisis, for example, COVID has been a crisis which has hit all of us, right? See, when you have a crisis, there are two ways you can react. One is you can say, "Arey mar gaya, main kya karu? I can't do anything. I'm dead. I will sit at home. I will watch video games and I will watch Netflix and I will crib about the bloody virus coming out of Wuhan." There are other guys who says, "Boss, okay, there is a problem, but let us fight." Investors want fighters. And in fact, This COVID has given us guys like us investors like us guys the opportunity to see whether the founder is a fighter or not. So this guy was a fighter, right? COVID has provided you an opportunity. You have to prove to the investor that you are a fighter. Okay. I'll just take one more example and then I'll conclude and then we can throw it open for questions. This is a very interesting startup. By the way, these are real startups, and I have not invested in them, but I have been mentoring them, both of them. So this is called Velotail. What they've done is, when you go on a holiday, you will normally stay in either a hotel or a resort. These guys say, okay, you stay in our homestays like Airbnb. Okay, but these homestays will be in villages, clean, sanitized. We will ensure it is clean and sanitized. We will ensure you have, let's say, Bisleri packaged drinking water. We'll ensure you have electricity around the clock, hot water, etc., etc. All that we will clean sheets, clean bed sheets. And you actually see village life. You can be involved in village life, right? Things like this, feeding chickens, sowing crops, etc., etc. Right? Unique experience, very, very unique experience. Right? So they also branded it, and you can see that in the picture. Like Oyo Rooms, each of their homestays was branded. So they don't own them. It is owned by somebody in the village. He has maybe 2 or 3 spare rooms in his house. And he says, okay, I will brand it Velotail and let us try and convert this into a standardized homestay. Very similar to Oyo, except that Oyo was for hotels and this is for homestays in villages. Okay. That is obvious. Now, COVID. Okay, no travel, no holidays. It's all stopped. So these guys, the business just did not take off. It had started, but after COVID, it came down significantly. But they said, okay, now there is an opportunity. Today, more and more offices has gone towards work from home. And work from home does not have to be work from home. It can be work from anywhere. You can be sitting on a beach. You can be sitting in the Himalayas, as long as you have an internet connection. Correct? A strong internet connection. So what they did was they said, okay, for each of our homestays, we will get the best and the strongest internet connection that we can. And they actually launched a new campaign. They said, don't work from home, work from Velotail home. Okay. So they're actually trying to take advantage of the COVID situation. Did it work? So far, it has not. They just launched it about 2 months back. So far, it is not. But this is one more thing I want to tell you guys. It may not work. What you're trying may not work. But what the investor wants to see is, are you the kind of person who will keep trying, who's persistent, who's fighting? And they could see that the founders of Velotail were fighting. And that's what the investor wants to see, right? So even if you don't succeed, the fact that you're fighting is a huge positive message to the potential investor. Okay. So just to summarize, when you're pitching to investors, I have talked about only 3 things. Of course, there are many more, but these are 3 things which normally people miss out. And that's why I thought I'd talk about these 3. One is, please show him why your startup is persistent. Secondly, in your pitch, you have to clearly communicate your Vikram, and that could be 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, not more than that, right? And 3, you have to communicate the fact that you're a fighter, and which is the reason why he should invest in you. Okay. So with that, I'll finish the formal part of the session, which is my presentation. By the way, this is a link to the book in case some of you want to buy it. Those who don't get it, I think those who are likely to get it will get it in the next 2-3 days. But those who don't, if you want to buy it, you're more than welcome. So what I'll do is I'll just stop sharing and just give me 1 minute. Yeah. And by the way, in case somebody has not got a copy of the book, wants to pick it up, this is the link I put it down on chat. This is the link on Amazon where you can pick it up from. whenever I meet you after COVID, I'm very happy to treat you to a coffee and more at CCD, Barista, wherever, but after COVID, not before COVID, and to sign the book. Okay, so that's it. I'll stop here and let's have questions now.
Again, please raise or put up a chat in case you're looking forward for some queries.
Boss Vijay, that cake and coffee you were to send me has not reached yet.
Is it? Who is asking first question?
Hello, Kamaksha this side.
Yes.
Actually, I want to connect with a technical co-founder. So, can Amity help me in this regard?
Yes, shortly we'll be coming out with a founders meet. We are planning to do that sometime in second or third week of May. So request you to share an email with me. I have already shared my credentials in the chat box. If you would see somewhere it is written vvsingh@aii.amity.in.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
please share me across.
So by the
Sure,
way,
sure.
I must mention, since sorry, who asked that question?
Kamaksha Prasad Nayak.
Kamaksha. Okay. Why is your name? Why is your this thing BP Patnaik?
I think 4 names are coming under.
No, this is Kamaksha Prasad Nayak only.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so co-founders are actually very important for
Yeah,
several
that's right.
reasons, and investors normally will be a little more reluctant to invest in a single founder company for multiple reasons. One is the risk, right? Because unfortunately, if something happens to the founder, but also, you know, there will be crisis times, there will be tough times when, at which stage, you will find that you need both people around. For example, at the time that you're looking at funding, it's almost a full-time job, getting funding. So
Yeah.
one guy looks at raising funds, one guy looks at operations, or one guy looks at marketing, one guy looks at operations, right? So
Right.
it's always good to have co-founders, but not too many. Too many co-founders has another set of problems, which I can come to if somebody wants.
Right.
Yeah.
Apologies, and I think I'll answer this BP Patnaik. This name is just appearing again and again right on your screen. And actually, BP Patnaik is the CEO of a AIC incubator in Odisha called CV Raman University, and he's the one who actually circulated this link among the startup. I am one of the startup in his cohort, so I think that's the reason it is.
But then my only suggestion is you should have had a more interesting name, like maybe Katrina Kaif. At least the audience would have been interested. BP Patnaik, nobody is interested.
Great. Thank you. That is my apologies. Yeah.
Even I would have been interested. I'm talking to Katrina Kaif.
So all the people with name BP Patnaik, please do share me a email with respect to your idea, startup idea or deck. We'll discuss it separately in case anything required. Thank you. Any other questions? Once more.
Yes,
sir,
there
is a question from Manu Mittal. Why are single family companies not favorite with investors? Different co-founders can have different mindset.
Sorry, single family.
Yeah,
single founder.
It should be single founder company. Yeah. Why are
I think I just answered that question. No?
Yes.
One is because it's a risk. Secondly, because there are, you know, each person can bring a different capability to the table. So one can be a solid operations guy, one can be a solid marketing guy, maybe one is a tech guy, right? So 2 to 3 founders is good. And 3 is when you're raising funds, in any case, you may need to split up. So that's important. But don't have too many of them, because when you have too many of them, they pull in multiple directions, number one. Number two, your fixed salary bill is too high. And therefore, the viability of your project, of your business is hit very badly. So more than 3 is not a good idea. 2 to 3 is ideal.
So Satya,
And
this
what, yeah,
Bonvi. May I go?
yeah, please go.
Satya this side from Bonvi. And sir, my question is, when we talk about entry barrier, okay, and does regulation come under if there is a market which is highly regulated, let's say such as drones, right? Is that considered as entry barrier or it's a problem of scalability? If you want to-
So, okay, so let's take the example of drone. See, if there is a if there is a regulation issue, yes, it will impact your scalability. I agree. I agree. Uh, but I think if you look at the business of drones, since you've talked about it today, I don't think the regulations are. I think they are a lot more relaxed today, so it's not a problem. See, you must remember what is entry barrier. Entry barrier is something which you have, which the other guy finds tough to get. So if it is a regulation, then it applies equally to both. Unless you have spent 1 year in getting approvals, and getting those approvals will take the other guy 6 months. Then that becomes an entry barrier. So remember, an entry barrier is something which you have and not and what the other guy will find tough to get. If it is something which is tough for everybody, then it's not an entry barrier. Then it's a basic problem with the business model, because even you can't grow.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, I think drone has that type of a thing today. It's you take a 6 month to 1 year sometimes to actually get the regulation approve your certification as an OEM to manufacture drones or to sell drones. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, there is an extension to the question which was asked just previously, which is on the single founder side of it. So Manu is talking about like husband and wife or son as a founders. So is that entertained by investors?
Okay, so I'll put it like this. Let's take husband and wife, right? If both of them are capable, if both of them are qualified, experienced, both of them bring some capability to the table, yes, definitely it qualifies. There is no problem. And we have seen several cases like this, we've invested. But where it is, let's say, for example, the husband is highly qualified, experienced, he is the founder, and the wife actually is doing nothing, but half the shares are in her name. That does not qualify as a co-founder. So a co-founder has to bring some solid capability to the business. Otherwise, that co-founder doesn't count. Somebody who's only put in money and is not doing anything, it does not qualify as a co-founder.
Sir, with reference to concept patent, is that hold any edge with the investors? Because device-based patents, yeah, certainly it holds some edge. But how about the concept patents?
Can you give me an example? Can you give me an example?
Like different type of OTT platforms, for example, you're right. When you talk about blockchain or any product based technology, it's easily viable. I mean, it's not easily viable for competitors to build something very easily. But a concept patent, something like YouTube, or if they are trying to duplicate something like travel sites, right? So investors will think that that is a very lucrative market, but still it could be duplicated, right?
Okay, so there are two parts to this answer, right? Part one is, so I'm assuming when you say concept, it's not only an idea, you've actually built the business. Is that right? Because an idea cannot be patented anyway. See, you must remember, an idea is actually meaningless. As our Prime Minister keeps saying, we have 135 crore people. You have an idea, there'll be probably 1 lakh other people or maybe 10,000 other people with a similar idea, right? So ideas are meaningless, both from the point of view of patenting and from the point of view of investors. What is important is the implementation of that idea and therefore, creation of that business. Now, I'll just take this in two parts. If you look at patent, right? I am not the right person to answer a question on patents, but my son is a lawyer, by the way, and he has handled some such patent cases. And my understanding is that it is very difficult to prove the patentability of a concept. It is very difficult, right? Product, it is easier. Concept, it is tougher. However, I'm not the right guy. That is something you'll have to check with a patent lawyer because they are the experts. But if you look at the investor's viewpoint, right, what he is basically interested in is the entry barrier, correct? Whether it has been patented or not, as long it is going to take your competitor X months, maybe 6 months to catch up with you, he's very happy because that's your entry barrier, number one. Number two, during these 6 months, you should have developed the product further so that you're 6 months ahead. Or you have got so many more customers in these 6 months, or you built your brand, or your machine learning has got that much more data, so your entry barrier is improved. So the investor, yes, patent is a good idea, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you don't have a patent, as long as you have an entry barrier, which keeps you X months ahead of your competitor and continues to keep you ahead of your competitor, he's happy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir, I got it. Yeah, thanks. Basically, in US and other places, concept patents is very sensitive, but places like India, I don't think so. Yeah, but
I think you have to talk to a patent lawyer because and when you find out this answer, please let me know. I will use it as I'll use it as part of my next presentation.
Sure, sir.
See, I keep saying I learn from you guys. I always learn from young people like you.
Anish, do write to us because we have a dedicated team with respect to the patent. Okay, in case you require any kind of a support, do send a mail to me.
Certainly will do that. Thank you.
But please remember one thing. For example, if you're creating a software product, very difficult to patent.
Very difficult. Yes.
I have been a programmer myself, and I know you can make subtle changes in your program, bring in, change the names of variables, bring in extra comments, maybe have a few loops which do nothing at all, and it looks like a different program. How does the patent officer, the guy examining it, know that this is different from what the other guy did? So it's very, very difficult to patent software products.
Yes.
Got it.
Sir, Shivam Kapil is saying, sir, should we focus on targeting the customer first or should we focus on developing our product?
It's a very hypothetical question. So I think let's take an example, right? Can you give me an example of what you're talking about? What's the product?
Shivam, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, because this will vary depending on, what the product is, who your target is, etc. So let's take one example. Yeah, Shivam? Shivam is gone. He asked his question and went away.
No, Shivam is there, but yeah.
Providing maids in real time. Okay. Okay. So first of all, when you're talking of providing maids in real time, the product is not complex. It's a very simple product, isn't it? I mean, essentially, what are you doing? You'll probably have an app, right? Which each customer has to download. Building the app will take you how much time? 1 month? Not more, right? And back end, you have a database of potential maids and what their background is, etc., right? So in a case like this, it makes sense to create your product, right? There are situations where you don't need a product to start. For example, if you're in a consulting business, you don't need a product, right? You will start by offering consulting services to your clients. Over time, maybe part of that consulting will get converted and more productized so that the human involvement becomes less and less. So your product builds up over time, right? So it varies. Most of the time, however, you will typically have to create the product, at least a bare minimum product, what sometimes we call an MVP, minimum viable product, without the frills. Build something, start it off with the money that you are getting, build more and more so that your entry barrier increases.
Yeah, Mohit has asked, sir, could you share some of the startup challenge with Naukri portal and how did you overcome? Not sure.
Naukri?
Yeah.
How did I overcome? No, I was not involved with Naukri.
Mohit, if you can unmute yourself and...
what's the question? Not clear.
Yeah, question is not clear. Yeah.
Boss, I wish I were the founder of Naukri. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. I would be living in some 5-star hotel with my Jaguar मैं तो थार चलाता. I drive a Thar, a Jeep.
Uh,
So I don't know what the question is. I'm not clear.
yeah. So the next question is: does age difference between co-founder also matters to investors?
No, age difference is not an issue. I mean, you can have one youngster, you can have one older person. Just keep one thing in mind. If the founder or both the founders are both old, it is tougher for them to get investment because investors believe that, in a startup, you have to have phenomenal energy levels, because you have to work almost round the clock and you have to respond very fast. Older people tend to have lower energy levels and lower response time, slower response time. Okay. So if you have founders who are only old, for example, if both guys are above 50 or worst case above 60, it's very, very difficult to get funding. In fact, I've seen situations where father and son have got funding because the son is the face, the son is doing all the work, and the father is, sharing his experience, his vision, etc. That works. Age difference is not an issue, but there must be at least one founder who's young enough to project, to show the investors that he can spend the kind of time, he won't have to sleep for 2 hours in the afternoon, etc., etc.
Any last question?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Pankaj, I think, has a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, just I want to give you the brief of my project. That my project is to turning waste plastic to oil. Okay. So whatever we have heard till now about regarding the softwares and all those things. Okay. But when it comes to manufacturing any product, okay, so it becomes a very difficult to get this fund because most of the people they ask that show me your product, but to create and showing your product, you again need to set it up the something and then set it up the capital intensive machinery. It requires a huge capital. Okay. So most of the times I do not tell, but it's always that your idea gets killed in your mind itself because to create a product you need to show something. Okay, you need to create a customer base, but when will you able to create your customer base? When you are able to turn that your product into a actualization and you sell that product to the customers in the market. Okay, so in that case, how one should raise a fund. Okay, because again and again it becomes a challenge.
Okay, so you're right, it is an issue. I agree with you. So first of all, before you go to your external angel investor, right? Because the angel investor will want to see proof, and today angel investors want to see, when I say proof, they want to see traction. They want to see the business actually happening. I agree with you. If you're into manufacturing, then obviously it is going to, you need money to do that manufacturing. The investor, unfortunately, will not invest in an idea, right? But the investor, if your idea is good, if your product works, he is willing to invest in pilots. That you have to remember, right? Now, for a pilot, you don't need to set up your entire plant in most cases, right? You can outsource the actual you have the design, you outsource the manufacturing to somebody else who does contract manufacturing, and you show a pilot and you show the pilot having been implemented in maybe 1 or 2 places. That is enough for the investor to get interested. I'll give you an example. One of my students, I used to be a professor at MDI, I have now retired. He had created a new UV machine, ultraviolet machine for sanitizing anything, right? Currency notes, mobile phone, etc., etc. And that's a very popular thing nowadays. So he obviously couldn't set up the plant because he didn't have the money. But what he did was he called a contract manufacturer who had to create the dabba. He had to, create the entire box. And with that, he was able to show a few prototypes. Once he showed the prototypes, he got the money. Okay. So up to the prototype stage, definitely you'll have to look for money from other sources. And I'll give you a couple of possible sources. See, you are talking of waste management, right? You're talking of plastic to, what is it?
Oil.
Plastic to oil.
Plastic to oil.
Oh, by the way, that's very interesting. I've never heard of that. So
because sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, whenever we talk about the plastics always comes from the petrochemicals, crude oil. Okay, when we extract the crude oil, So during the crude oil, we get the byproduct as a polyethylene, and that we process the polyethylene and we get all these plastic products like HDP, LDP, PP, PS. So what I'm doing it, I'm reversing I'm working on the reverse engineering. I'm
Okay.
turning that particular plastic to its origin form, so that particular oil will be used as an alternate source of energy. Suppose if I purify that particular oil, so I'll able to run a generator. Okay. And if I use that kacha oil, means raw oil, semi-finished oil also, so I can use it use it in a boiler to generate a heat, to generate, you can say that, to energy and all those things. So these are the just bare minimum
Interesting.
application.
So what is the stage your project is in?
So you can say that the project, there are many people who are doing this particular business. My project is not nothing new, but when I talk about the manufacturing things, okay, you cannot cover to setting up a manufacturing facility at one place and you can cover the whole India. Okay, there are so many people who are doing it. I'm just looking for a particular market. Over there, I see the problem statements that the plastics
I'm saying, what is the stage your project is in? Have you already done this, or is it a concept? Has it been proven?
No.
Have you done it in the lab? What is it?
It's a proven, sir. It's a proven. I have the supplier also who are able to supplying with the machine. You can say that it's the existing business model. Nothing new to it. Just only I'm just identifying the area where the plastic is piled up. Means we can have so many places in the India we can have a plastic. Just I'm collecting that plastics and turning plastic to the oil. I have everything. Means I have a supplier. I have a, you can say that, the customers also who are willing to buy from me. Okay, just only thing is.
So where is the problem? Why are you stuck for money? Is it the equipment that is required for this conversion?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The equipment cost is around coming 1.25 to 1.5 CR. So only equipment cost is, because whenever I go with the smaller amount of the capacity of the plant, okay, the economies of scale, or you can say that I do not reach on the profitability state. Okay. So I need to go with the 10 metric ton or 15 metric ton of the plant. Okay. And it requires a huge amount of capital.
Okay, interesting. See, at this stage, getting 1.5 crores from investors, it is possible. I'm not saying it is not possible. It is possible, provided. Have you shown that this is done? This is doable. Where have you done it? Okay, do one thing. Let us not carry on this discussion here because the others may not be interested. You send me a mail. Vijay, you have my email ID, right?
Yes, as soon as I receive a mail from them, I'll connect.
Just send me a mail and I can share with you some thoughts on how to take this forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Pankaj, you have my email ID, right?
Yeah.
You can do
Yes.
Thank you. So I think that's it for now. We can wind up for the day. All right. Thank you so much for this wonderful interactive session. I think everyone would have got some level of clarity on how on the investment side of it, how to pitch to an investor. And I'm sure if in case any queries or some doubts are there, please reach out to us. We'll surely connect to Dr. Dhruv Nath. He will be more than happy to interact one-on-one, and we'll take it forward. So thank you so much for this interactive session. And it has been always a pleasure to listen to your suggestion, advices on that.
Welcome. Okay, just give me 1 minute. What I will do is I will give you my LinkedIn profile in case somebody wants to connect and ask me a question directly. Just hold on 1 minute. I'll put it down on chat. I don't remember my profile, but I'll just give it to you 1 minute. Yeah. So I'm putting it down in the chat thing. Yeah. So that's my LinkedIn profile in case somebody wants to connect up.
Yes. I have also shared, you can search through LinkedIn, my name, Amity Innovation Incubator. We'll be more than happy to connect.
Okay.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Thank
Great.
you, everyone.
Meeting all of
It
you.
was nice having you all here and listening to the session. I'm sure you would have gained a lot of insights, and also looking forward to see you on our next section of this A to Z series on startup investment. 23rd, I've shared you the link. In case not, please send a mail. I'll send you the link for that 23rd session on term sheet for early stage startups.